What's going on, everyone? About 51% of stocks in the S&P 500 closed down in the red today. And as we can see by looking at today's heat map, it was a pretty exciting day for multiple different reasons. I'm sure many of you could see that big red box on the screen right now with NVDA down nearly 5%. And we have a lot to talk about with this one as the US is weighing some new chip export restrictions, and we actually had another big chip-related stock, ticker symbol ASML, accidentally leak their earnings before they were supposed to. That resulted in their worst drop ever and a loss of $50 billion in terms of market valuation in minutes. So we're definitely going to cover this situation, but we also have a lot to talk about with the Middle East, Israel, Iran situation and what's going on with that mess. And then we also have news with Walgreens earnings and how they announced that they're going to be closing 1,200 stores, and investors could not be happier. So we have a lot to talk about today, and as you guys know, the excitement and craziness is just getting started because earnings season is just ramping back up again. So we're set for an exciting week, so let's jump right into it, Tom.
Yeah, the SPY was not making new all-time highs today, sadly. Lately, it seems like it's been pushing to new highs just about every day, but today there was a pretty stark pullback. It actually gave back all the gains from yesterday where that low of day was today, so that was pretty rough to see. But Mike, a lot of people were like, hey, what really kicked off the selling this morning? The SPY, for the most part, was holding up pretty well, but once we kind of got to like that 10:25, 10 a.m. Eastern time point, that's whenever we started to see ASML start to fall from the heavens. And once we started to see that happen, all the other chip stocks and tech stocks generally followed suit. Going back to the Bookmap, just zooming in on the tech sector here, you can see AMD, AVGO, Qualcomm, NVIDIA, Dell, MU, like all of them are down today, right? Going back to ASML though, this was actually an earnings leak that happened a little bit early. So I don't know who's to blame here at ASML, Mike, but somebody had the time off and is going to get in some trouble probably.
Oh gosh, especially when it results in the worst drop that the stock has ever had. And on top of that, like not only was there a leak, but their earnings weren't all that great either. Their net bookings came in at half of what they were expected to, and the company kind of warned that like their China sales going forward might not be as good as everyone expected them to be, especially given the fact that the United States and the Dutch government is really ramping up on the chip export restrictions to China. So this situation is just kind of a disaster for this company. ASML has been one of the strongest stocks over like the past like 5 to 10 years or so, but I'll tell you, not only just over like the recent short term, but even like over the past couple of months, the stock has been pulling back quite a bit. And as we look at it in the short term, it doesn't have a lot of good going for it. So this stock is looking a little bit weak, and especially when you have this sort of bearish sentiment, it's not looking too hot.
It's definitely not. And that drop today was wild, but like you said, they've been dropping a lot recently anyways. And, it kind of reminds me of another stock that's been pretty bad lately, SMCI, right? That one had a lot of hype and was doing very well over the past couple of years. But as of the past year or so, it's been kind of pulling back, especially since like February or March of this year, the pullback, that's where it really started to happen. But going back to ASML, that's definitely not a good situation. And we definitely are going to talk about another chip stock that definitely didn't have the best day either, which is NVIDIA. I know you mentioned some export restrictions with ASML, but NVIDIA is kind of facing some export restrictions of their own, actually.
Yeah, so basically the United States is really clamping down on these big chip stocks because chips are more valuable than like almost anything else right now, given how involved they are into everything nowadays, especially in terms of like military use and AI and everything like that. But essentially what's happening is the United States is weighing some new chip export restrictions to countries in the Persian Gulf. And of course, when you are NVIDIA, who is, a company behind some of the most popular chip technology in the world, you don't want to see, you don't even want to think about having, some potential customers restricted. And what this also brought upon were fears of like, okay, if the United States is, weighing new export restrictions to countries in the Persian Gulf, might that extend to even other countries in other regions of the world? Either way, it's not good for NVIDIA, and as we can see by looking at today's price action, investors didn't like this news.
Yeah, they didn't. And NVIDIA was actually falling down well before the ASML situation really started to unfold. We also saw AMD pulling back a lot before the ASML situation happened anyways. It was kind of weighing on the QQQ from when the market opened as well. But going back to the NVIDIA situation, Mike, they've been talking about these export restrictions for a long time to China. And if they do start, enforcing those to these other countries too, it's not going to be good for NVIDIA, of course. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's really going to hurt NVIDIA too bad with some of these smaller countries. But of course, Mike, it just depends on everything going on, right? Like let's just say, for example, that we start to get into like a conflict with, let's just say the UAE or somebody like that in the Persian Gulf, then it might be a bigger deal than to somebody like Iran. So I'm curious, on who they would do it with. But either way, it's a slight negative, that's for sure.
I think the key thing to keep in mind with situations like this is NVIDIA is a stock that moves in major ways. Literally just yesterday, we were talking about how this stock closed at a record high and how it passed the $3.4 trillion market cap valuation level. And today it's down 5% and selling off quite a bit. So the key lesson is to be willing to adapt and be flexible with your trading. Yes, it's great that the market is, hugging its all-time high and there's still a lot of, euphoria and bullishness in a general sense, but it's like, in market situations like we're in now, and especially like geopolitical situations like we're in now, when there's some serious risks around the world, not only in Europe, but also the Middle East and in Asia, it's important to be willing to adapt, especially in an election year. So don't marry the bull side or the bull side. Be willing to adapt and flow with the market. But these chip stocks are definitely looking a little bit weak in the short term, and we are going to cover these with some specific setups as the video goes on. But we do have some important updates with the Middle East situation. So, Tom, oil was selling off today. What's going on here?
Yeah, it looks like Israel's actually not expected to strike Iran's oil industry. And I also heard the nuclear industry either. They're going to try to stick to military targets. And the Biden administration had been trying to get this done for a while here. Whenever I went to the bottom of this article here, I saw that the White House was actually pretty concerned about Iran's retaliation to whatever strikes Israel is going to do here. So, I don't know if obviously that's just playing politics or what, but they were trying hard to get Israel, in their words here, to walk back off its potential target. So I feel like that at the end of the day, they might be holding oil in the back of their pocket. They talked about maybe them using it in a later date if Iran strikes them very hard. But obviously, that's all a guessing game, right? In the short term, at least we know that this is not going to be something that affects oil too drastically, right? Especially since they're not targeting it. And we can see that crude oil and crude oil stocks dropped quite a bit today from this news.
Yeah, so that is definitely worth noting. The only thing that I will note here is that while it's good that they are not set to strike oil infrastructure and the oil industry overall, if they do strike the Iranian military industry and in a just like in a major way, I think that can kind of overpower the fact that they ignored the oil targets. You know what I mean? Like if they just raise hell on the military targets, that will escalate the conflict and have a bullish impact on oil. So that is the update with the Middle East situation. As we know, with major geopolitical events and conflicts, just like the ones going on in the Middle East, they change day by day, and it's important to stay updated with the news. We're going to continue to cover this topic very closely, so if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. We're going to keep this closely updated. But on another note, Tom, there are a lot of exciting earnings on the schedule this week, and like we talked about in the intro today, WBA or Walgreens reported earnings this morning, and investors could not be happier that the company is closing 1,200 stores. What is going on here?
Yeah, I couldn't believe I heard that. Walgreens is closing 1,200 stores over the next 3 years and 500 stores next year. So I found that to be a pretty negative headline, right? And then I went and I looked at the stock and I was like, what the hell? This thing's ripping up above $10 and it actually closed up 15% today. Ended up being a lot better. Even had a good move after open, which investors were loving today. But going back to the article, Mike, you know, they're closing some stores, but sometimes this can actually be a positive for some companies. I hate to say it, but they're facing a lot of pressure as well. You know, as we start to scroll down here through the article, there's been a lot of other things that have been happening throughout, I guess, the whole entire drug and pharmacy world, where like Amazon, for example, does like same day deliveries now on some drugs and stuff like that. So I don't know, Mike, they're facing a lot of pressure, but sometimes whenever these companies get pretty low, this type of news can be pretty good. Plus they actually had good earnings too.
And I think the key thing here is that when we look at Walgreens, this is a stock that has been struggling for years now. It peaked back in 2015, and ever since that point, it has just been downtrending ever since. And like from a charting standpoint, it only appears to be getting worse and worse. So when you have management say like, okay, like we're gonna close 1,200 stores, it shows signs that they're trying to turn things around. And I think that is the key thing here, because investors are just like, they're tapping out. They're like, we can't really take it anymore. So when we see signs where like the company is like fundamentally trying to like, you know, get things flowing in the right direction again, it really does change sentiment, which is a good sign. On top of that, they did beat their sales and profit expectations, which again is a good thing, but they still have a lot of work to do considering that they do have 8,700 locations just in the US and a quarter of them are not profitable. But either way, let's keep a close eye on this stock going forward. It is at such a beaten down point where, you know, when you have investor sentiment this negative, it does present good opportunities. So again, keep this stock close on watch, considering how low it is. Back in 2015, the stock was nearly $100 a share, and now it's all the way down to 10.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people have actually been trying to buy up the dip a lot along the way on this one, and they've been pretty pissed off with the performance so far. Hopefully the management can get this turned around. But the cool thing about Walgreens is that in the short term, they actually have some pretty good uptrends coming off of catalysts like this. Now, obviously on the overall downtrend, there has been some decent uptrends here. Like we'll just nitpick a couple of them. This one was a nice 65% uptrend. We had another one on the way down, 37%. You know, there's a couple of the larger ones. And right now the stock's really low. There's a good gap to fill, maybe up to that $15 mark. And I would think that with how beaten down it is, we might even see shorts start to cover as well on this stock. And, you know, I don't blame them, especially with how low it's starting to get. It's about time, right? But Mike, going into the overall earnings for tomorrow, as we know, ASML's earnings were actually leaked today. They might report tomorrow morning. We'll have to see how that situation shakes out. It would be funny if they came out with different numbers than what the leak said or something, right? But we don't know. Just keep in mind that'll be a very interesting situation. Morgan Stanley reports, Abbott, U.S. Bank, Citizens. So we have some more banks tomorrow. AA in after hours, CSX in after hours tomorrow as well. They were moving quite a bit today, I noticed. And then, of course, Thursday, Taiwan Semiconductors and Netflix. And I will say, Mike, I can't wait for Thursday. I'm kind of getting tired of hearing about the banks.
Yeah, right? I mean, Netflix is going to be an exciting one on Thursday for so many different reasons. And then, you know, next week we'll have a lot of the big tech stocks as well. So we're set for an exciting next couple of weeks. And then looking at the economic schedule for this week, it is pretty empty, which is a good thing because that'll really allow us to focus on just the price action and momentum in the market overall. There's basically nothing on the calendar for tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we do have some retail sales, but honestly, nothing too crazy. On Friday, we have some building permits, but we're basically all set and ready to go for SPY and some analysis for tomorrow. So Tom, we're still very close to all-time highs. What do you have for us in terms of important levels and key analysis to keep in our minds?
Yeah, SPY actually bounced off a lot of the levels that we've been looking at over the past few days today. Right around that 582.50 mark was a very good resistance intraday where there was a lot of good rejections before that big move lower. So we're going to use some of those levels as resistances for tomorrow, like 582, 581, and 580 will act as pretty decent resistances. You can see 580 even held up towards the end of day today. Whenever I look at supports, I'm watching 578, 575, and then at 573 to the downside as the more major levels. I do see a slight level right around 576 as well that I don't have plotted for the sake of saving our eyes from straining. But nonetheless, Mike, that's my analysis on SPY today. And I hope that this momentum doesn't carry over too much into tomorrow, but if it does, be willing to adapt. I know everybody's been riding the bull train lately, but that's going to be the big deal in the short term here, especially because I noticed, Mike, and this plays into SPY a lot, so I wanted to mention it, is that NVIDIA and Apple are actually right around their all-time highs and possibly double topping with that price action today. So we have to keep that situation on watch.
Yeah, and we have a couple setups that we're going to cover as the video goes on that stocks are facing some heavy resistance overhead at, and a lot of all-time highs are being tested. And the first one that comes to my mind is Palantir, which is actually my first setup for tomorrow. And we actually talked about this one in yesterday's video, but this stock is double topping right around that like $44 to $45 area, which was its all-time high back from January of 2021. And we are seeing a fair amount of selling pressure come in right here. And looking at today's price action, it definitely wasn't all that great. Palantir is still on my bearish radar for tomorrow, and I would love to see the stock get below the $42 level of support and to keep consistent pressure on its low of day.
Yeah, that would be an awesome support break, Mike. And this was an awesome play from yesterday. I was watching it this morning give out, and I was like, wow, that is looking fantastic. And yeah, that big resistance we talked about as well around that $45 mark is going to be pretty big as well, of course, in the short term. With my first play, I'm looking at a bit of a weird one, Mike, and this might surprise people. I'm actually looking at Boeing back to the upside in the short term, and I know there's been a lot of bad news with Boeing, but they've been finding some support around this $150 to $148 mark, and if we zoom out on the daily chart, they're starting to hit right on a key trend line here as well, which has been pretty consistent so far. This would be like the fourth touch technically on this trend. So I'm going to really watch this closely over the next few days for some more bullish price action. And I'm going to have a bullish bias with some day trades on this. I'll be looking for a breakout tomorrow around 154. And if we see that, I think there could be a pretty decent intraday move there. But I know Boeing has had a lot of negativity surrounding it lately. And of course, job layoffs and job cuts and everything like that. But sometimes, like we talked about with Walgreens, investors might like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, because when you have so much negative news, the stock can actually get to the point where it's like, it gets like overreacted to. It's like when you have so much negative news, sometimes just the, littlest bit of positivity in any way, shape, or form can really shift investor sentiment and positioning. And Boeing's sentiment is bearish as it can get. So that's good. So good stuff there, Tom. Another stock I'm watching very closely is ARM, and it is to the downside. This is pretty similar to the ASML and NVDA price action that we covered earlier in today's video. ARM is pretty big in the semiconductor industry, and they struggled quite a bit today as they closed down by 7%. Of course, the NVIDIA chip export news didn't help, and neither did the ASML earnings leak news. So with that being said, all chip stocks took a pretty bad beating today, and ARM had some really bad price action. So especially if we could see a break below that like $148 level, I really like the reward to risk playing this one to the downside.
Yeah, I do too. I really love ARM down for tomorrow, and it really held below that intraday resistance today around like that 152 mark as well. So I'll definitely be watching it tomorrow. It was one of the better sellers today. I'm watching Exxon Mobil in the short term as well, Mike, and I'm watching this in both directions, actually. There's a big support in the short term right around 120. So if I see that start to give out tomorrow, I might even look at puts on oil in the short term, especially while we're waiting for Israel to retaliate and everything. There could be some put opportunities while people are waiting. At the same time, if we do end up seeing a good bounce off support, maybe a rebreak of 122, I will look for momentum back up, but I don't know. We might have to see some pretty good news out of the Middle East for that. And by good news, I don't mean good for the world, good news for oil stocks.
Alrighty, well, with that being said, let's jump right into today's momentum plays. And with the first one, we have HIMS to the upside.
Yeah, HIMS was crazy, 11.22%. I mean, HIMS doesn't need any HIMS, I'll tell you that. If it can break above 23, I'll be watching it to the upside for tomorrow.
All right, with the next one, we have CCL also to the upside.
Yeah, the cruise lines and the airlines are killing it in the short term. If CCL can break above 22, then keep watching it up.
All right, and now with the last one, we have BABA for both directions. And Tom, these Chinese stocks have been all over the place.
Yeah, they have. And, they've been awesome, actually. And I think pullbacks are healthy here for China stocks. It's just, understanding that they are healthy and, incorporating that into your trading strategy. For tomorrow, I'm going to look for a breakdown of 101.50 on BABA. You could maybe target $100 to the downside there, but watch out for that $100 support. If we see BABA happen to rip up above 104.50, then I'll be watching it up.
Sounds good. And Chinese stocks, I know this is on a little bit of a side note, are at a pretty interesting point because just a couple weeks ago, they were more popular than any other stocks out there, and they are pulling back a decent amount. So for those who have more of a broader outlook, they can present some pretty decent dip buy opportunities here soon. So we'll definitely revisit these ones as the days go by. But back to the momentum plays, we have BABA, CCL, and HIMS on the radar for tomorrow. For BABA, we have both directions, and then for CCL and HIMS, we have the upside levels. So either way, keep these stocks close on watch for potential day trades tomorrow. If and only if they break through the levels Tom listed, the stronger and more consistent these stocks move, the better the setups become. You guys know the drill. But besides that, let's jump right into today's $540,000 big money trade, and we are looking at ticker symbol SHOO. This is a company that I'm sure a handful of you guys have heard about before. It is Steve Madden, especially related to their stock, but today the big money bought the 50 strike put options that expire on December 20th of 2024. This is a pretty interesting setup for multiple different reasons, but one of the biggest ones being that it is double topping right around its all-time high of $50 to $51.50 per share that it made back in December of 2021. At the same time, these put options are already in the money. They have a decent amount of time to them, and the price action today definitely weakened a decent amount as the market got closer to market close. Either way, I really like the reward to risk with this stock. It's not the craziest big money trade ever, as it's, only a $540,000 trade, but it's pretty interesting, and I'm pretty excited to see how it does.
Anytime I think of Steve Madden, I just instantly think of the scene from The Wolf of Wall Street. Every single time, and I knew Mike. He knew I was going to say that too, because he knows I love that scene in there. It's actually on my Discord account. If you guys go check it out, that's how much I like that scene. But this double top is pretty huge, Mike, and I love the timing of this big money play. It's awesome as it's double topping at this resistance. It's a great time, and also in the short term, they even picked I would say a great day to do it because of this candle and the way that it popped up into resistance and rejected. If we do start to see it turn over here, they picked a good point, pretty close to the top. So overall, I like this play with SHOO a lot. The risk reward ratio can be pretty good on this. I know it's an option, so you might have to, give or take a little bit more, but just drawing it out here real quickly on the chart, you could put a stop loss above that $50 to $51 mark mark and possibly target like $41 to $40 support underneath. Now, of course, that's a pretty, I would say, what would you say, Mike? A pretty long target, right? I doubt that's going to happen. I would pretty much target more like $44, somewhere more realistic like that, and keep my stop just above 50, which is that recent high. But overall, I love the setup here, and the risk-reward ratio is pretty good.
Beautiful. Well, either way, we are set for an exciting next couple of weeks. We have the election getting closer and closer. We have the Middle East situation still pretty crazy. We have chip stocks moving in an exciting way. Earnings season is upon us, and we're already seeing some pretty exciting movement. Guys, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. In every single video, we cover the most important news, events, earnings, charts that you won't see anywhere else, and just important things to know. When you subscribe, you'll get our videos recommended to you more often, and we're going to be covering all the most important topics every single day. So consider joining the Stocked Up crew, and we'll see you more often. But we also want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, which is Truce Option in the Stocked Up trading floor. They had a great post today and a great profit screenshot as well. So huge shout out to you, Truce, and keep up the great work going forward. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and let's crush it in the market tomorrow.